Welcome back. This is Jason of Llama Paints Minis, and today I'm going to show you how, using just a few paints from the Kimera Kolors Expansion Set 1, we can do a very simple but effective leather, complete with texture and everything. Now the paints I'm going to focus on are just the Oxide Brown Dark, Oxide Brown Medium, Oxide Brown Light, the Dark Ochre, and the Honeymoon Yellow. Now, a lot of people see this set and they think a lot of these colors are very samey and they don't know what to use them for, but they really turn out quite different. So here I'm just going to take a beat up old brush. Don't need to do anything fancy. I'm not even pre-diluting the paint. As you can see, I'm just drawing it out, getting a pile of it on there, and then very simply just like mashing, stamping, stippling, whatever you want to call it. I don't need it to be super neat, except maybe right where it meets the other details. And I don't even need the coverage to be that even at this point. Once it's on there, let it dry completely. And then I'm just going to mix right up on the line, only this time I'm going to cover less area than I did the first time. And you are going to see that even though these colors look very similar on the palette, they are quite different. And it'll give us a nice step up. And so what I'm trying to do is take advantage of the relatively transparent nature of acrylic paint to let some things show through and cover others. And so it will give us a sort of uneven texture like you might see on a worn leather. These particular paints in this range, in the Expansion Set 1, Colors of Nature, also have a very matte finish. So once they dry, it'll be a wonderful like tanned leather. Now here I'm going to grab a nicer brush. I'm just going into the Kolinsky Sable brushes from Kimera, grabbing the number 2 arrowhead or taper point, however you want to call it. Because for the next step I'm going to want something with a decent tip, but you can use whatever brush you're comfortable with. Of course, these brushes and the paints are available at Dracoya.com. But now I'm going to grab the next step up, and instead of just mashing on or stippling blobs like I was in the previous steps, I'm now going to draw, but pretty freehand, just some scratches. And I don't want to be, so here I'm just like tippy tapping the edge, and then I'm going to do some scratches. We don't need to be too neat here. In fact, the more random you can be, I think the better it's going to look in the end. Because as you build up these layers, some of them are still going to show through. And so it's going to look like deep, worn, weathered texture. And for a basic leather approach, I tend to find this is really effective. And I'm using a big piece here. This is, I think, 150 millimeter scale head. We'll just call him Fred here. Fred, the painting dummy. I use him for so many things. If you can get something like that, wonderful for practice. But imagine how effective this will even be on a much smaller figure, where the breaks in texture and stuff would be less noticeable. I use this kind of technique all the time for leather to do a quick and easy method. And you could do it with any range of colors, but here you just see I'm mixing out the rest of the gradient. I don't need to go any higher than that because, again, while these colors look pretty close together, they do get quite a bit brighter as you jump up. And so again, now I'm just doing even less tippy tap. Instead of a clean edge highlight here, you can see I'm doing a broken, so it looks like those edges are, again, like they're cracked, separated. But again, nothing special here, nothing difficult. Don't need massive amounts of brush control. Now this particular paint set, the Expansion Set 1, I find is very useful the more I play with it like this. You can even see with those colors, if you wanted, you could do more than just leather. I mean, you could do wood, or perhaps even a non-metallic metal if you added a little bit of a white color and a lighter yellow. Now here I'm just taking a medium tone and glazing back over my work. Again, I want the texture to be seen but subtly. I think that gives it a much more natural feel, and so I'm accentuating the volumes here while also sort of blending the previous work. And again, no fancy techniques, just thinned down to where it's pretty much transparent. speaking of transparent, there are a number of colors in the expansion set that are transparent, and I think that confused some people because they looked at the royal brown, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and cobalt blue green, and they noticed they weren't getting good coverage. And that's because if you read the pigment designators on the back, they are transparent paints. So they have just slightly different uses. Although admittedly, I almost wish they would make those colors in a more opaque version, but that's another topic. So here I'm just continuing the process of making more scratches and dots after I did a glaze pass. And you can take this as far as you want. You can go all the way up, and you can glaze in between each if you really want to make it subtle. But I find that inconsistency here is how to make it look the most natural. Again, you don't want to start doing all of the texture on the same layer or the same color of paint. You don't want the lines and dots to be the same. Again, just glazing in the previous layer here. As I'm not going for a look that's too vibrant, I want this to look pretty natural, and I want the texture to tell the story. I don't have any dramatic lighting. I'm not doing, reflective lighting or OSL back here, just leather. And you can see it looks a lot bolder and a lot shinier when it's wet, but once it dries, there you can kind of see the finish. And now the folds look very subtly blended. The texture is visible, but not punching you in the face. And now here I'm going to grab two other colors from the set. Royal Brown, which is one of those transparents we talked about, and then one simply called Purple. And you can see that Royal Brown is a very rich brown, almost like a cherry wood. And so now I'm just going to thin it farther because that was a little too bold for what I was going for. And that's a great test, by the way. I always test out on my thumb, and some people think it's just a tick or a habit that painters develop, but it really is useful because your skin is not going to pull much moisture off the brush, and so whatever you've mixed on the brush or on the palette will remain as you mixed it. It's also why I don't drag the brush across the tissue when there's excess water or paint. I just do it on my finger. And now here I'm being a little more selective with the glazing passes, right? So I'm trying to create a little bit of an uneven depth, an uneven richness in the color. Because if you've seen worn leather, you can look at a belt that's worn and you can't tell if it was originally black or dark brown or tan because it wears unevenly, and then some of the internal material starts to show out. And now just some refinements. Again, these brushes are great for this, especially on a larger surface. This number 2 arrowhead that they make, I'm just in love with it. I use it for everything, even on some of my smaller, like 28mm Warhammer stuff. You get kind of the best of both worlds. You get a super sharp, fine tip if you turn the brush sideways, and then if you turn it with the flat ways up and down, it holds a lot of paint. You can cover a large surface. Big reservoir for both water and paint. And now I just continue to my heart's content, doing what I want in terms of refinement. Both with glaze passes, maybe enriching some shadows, shifting the color just a little bit, which is something transparent paints are great for. You could even use one of those other ones in the box, like the cobalt blue green, if you wanted to shift it to look like, there's been, it hasn't been cleaned in a while, or you've got a different light you're trying to show is reflecting off of a perhaps more satin, tanned leather type look. But with transparent paint, that's the key. Take advantage of their transparent nature so stuff underneath shows through, or if you just want to shift a color or a feel. Most important here with the texture is you're trying to create value, but not a real dramatic jump from dark to light. So now, here I'm grabbing that dark ochre. And again, you can see it's quite a jump Now just more subtle dots and scratches, nothing super fancy here. But I hope that if you follow along with this, you can achieve a very similar result. Because if you saw I wasn't doing anything special, I didn't need you know, incredible brush control. I didn't need to mix techniques really. And then now you can just make it however you want. If you want to make the light focus in that big bulbous center at the back of the leather hood there, or whatever that is, or draw it more towards his face. And again, this is just a practice figure, but it's great for working on all kinds of techniques, all kinds of color recipes. So I recommend, if you have access to stuff like this or a 3D printer. And then again, this paint set, Expansion Set 1, has been one of the most fun sets from Kimera that I've used to practice, or to play with, to get better with, because I didn't understand it at first. And you know, like the primary set, the base set makes sense, but something like this was a little more involved. Now I'm jumping up to the honeymoon yellow to do some of the final dots and scratches. I may do another glaze pass and then touch up the highlights again. So once more, you've got layers of texture that are showing through. You got to figure this guy maybe is a wanderer, an adventurer, mercenary, warrior for hire, something like that. His leather has seen some stuff. And there's that purple, and so now I can shift it very subtly, and this is a wonderful color. I just mix it with a touch of the red of the royal brown. So now I've got a little bit more of a magenta type feel. But yeah, you can get this set, these brushes, and more at Dracoya.com. You can use my code LLAMA and the number 10, that's LLAMA10, to save 10%. And I hope to talk to you again soon.